The immortal John Hancock here, and today I'd like to talk about Atari prototypes. Over the years, I've been pretty lucky on finding about a dozen prototypes in my collection. I've traded some, I've sold some, and I definitely kept some. And so it's not the focus of my collection. I'm mostly a complete set collector. That's kind of what my focus is. But I do like getting that unique item. I mean, who doesn't? I have able to find and keep and even have people donate some great prototypes to my collection. I'd like to showcase what I currently have and talk about some basic facts that you need to know about prototypes. Anyway, sit back, relax, enjoy the video. Alright, this is the actual release of Spy Hunter. This is what it looks like, box and cart. There's actually more than one box. There's actually another box that came with a controller holder. And again, Spy Hunter is pretty hard to get and an uncommon game by itself. This is a prototype, and as you can see, it has a completely different label, and it says Spy Hunter Atari 2600. It has like a number on it, serial Sega Consumer Products. Now, the important thing to know when you're collecting prototypes or discover a prototype is that not all prototypes are created equal. Now, I've tested this prototype. It's the final ROM, which means it's less desirable. You know, typically this would be like a reviewer copy, not necessarily like a prototype. You know, prototype is, by definition, it's a prototype, but this would be sent out to like a reviewer if they wanted to like review the game before the game was produced on mass production. So a lot of these were sent out, but having one for Spy Hunter is kind of uncommon. All right, here is an 8-bit Atari cartridge, and these were made for computers, and they are smaller in size than a normal Atari 2600 cart. And I just want to show this for comparison. And this is a copy of Return of the Jedi, and it's an awesome game. Not my favorite Star Wars game, but pretty good, especially on the Atari 8-bit. Now, Parker Brothers and their prototypes looked a lot different than other companies. So they just took a standard shell, and they had these little tiny labels on the prototype, and they would have information on these labels. And so I'm trying to zoom in here. You can see here, yep, there's a label, and it says Atari Star Wars 12K Release 2, and it has a date. That's always good to see. Now, this is kind of a weird one because this is like essentially, there must have been like a bug in the ROM, and they released a second release of it. So this is a final. I couldn't find any differences between the released ROM and this, but this is Star Wars the arcade game, and it's important to know when you get a prototype, you need to play it. You need to play it extensively and to see if there's any differences between the prototype and the release copy, because you know there's a lot of people out there to be interested at least seeing the prototype. Now, if you have the know-how of dumping a prototype, even better. There's people out there that can do that. It takes a little bit more know-how on how to dump a prototype, but it's important that if there is a ROM variation, in my opinion, that these things need to be preserved. All right. Here is Mega Mania, and Mega Mania was a Atari 5200 game as well. This is the Atari 5200 version. If you notice, it's a wider card if you're not familiar with Atari 5200 cartridges. And it's important to know that Activision did release a lot of like reviewer copies. There's a lot of Activision was a larger company, and there's a lot more prototypes for a lot of their games. And so this is kind of a more common prototype. And this is what the 5200 prototype looks like. It's got a nice label on it. And again, it's the final. I tested it, and it's just, you know, a lot of these would be sent out pre-production to, you know, for people to review, to check out. And yeah, so that's that. And it's important to know that just because you have a prototype doesn't mean it's worth a ton of money. It really doesn't. And so the value is determined by whether the game was released or not, if it has some variations on the prototype versus the final copy, does it have different character graphics? Does it have different sound? Does it have different features? Those really are more sought after. And so having a final ROM have on the cartridge, it's less desirable. But it's still, for me, having something like this is really cool. I really enjoy having these variations in my collection. And so, you know, one thing's for certain, most people that have prototypes, they kind of determine the price, because, you know, there's not many of them out there. They can kind of set the bar on what they want for something, but most of the time people are wanting more than what it's worth. And so that's just my thoughts on that. All right, here's King Kong. King Kong was kind of like a bad ripoff of Donkey Kong. It's slow, it's not that fun to play, but it's an uncommon game. It's an uncommon game, and it was released by Tiger Vision. They had some cool colored carts, and they all had, you know, really high glossy labels. This is one of the games I don't have a box or manual for yet. And thank you to Casey from Spokane, Washington. And I now have this in my collection. You're like, whoa, what's that? Well, pre-production Tiger Vision cartridges typically had this brown casing. And I don't know exactly why they chose that, but they all had, like, you know, it was definitely different. And it had this, you know, had King Kong on the label right there. And yeah, I tested the ROM, and it doesn't appear to be any different. And just, it's cool. It's cool to have a prototype of an uncommon game. And it's just one of those things that's kind of neat. I like that it's different, has a different shell to it. And it says Tiger Vision right there on the back side. These are the types of things to look out for. If you see something funky about a cart, it's definitely worth picking up, and even going online, going on Atari Age into the Proto section and asking about it. All right, this is Data Age. Data Age is a third-party company. They made a lot of great Atari 2600 games, and so this is what the cartridges look like. This is Journey Escape. This is the cool box and cart. Frankenstein's Monster. And this is kind of a sought-after one. This was their last release. And here's the cart for it. And Bermuda Triangle, which is not sought after, though mine's sealed. And anyways, here are the actual released copies of the games. Now, this is pre-production, and it says Journey Escape. Now, I got this in Canada, and this is Bermuda Triangle. Now, this is not the first Journey Escape that I've scored. And so there's a story behind it. I scored a very rare unreleased copy of a prototype Secret Agent for 2600. And I no longer have it, but it was unreleased. And those prototypes are very sought after. And so whenever you see screws like this on especially like a Journey Escape or a prototype, you have to test the game, because the chances are is that it's not Journey Escape. Journey Escape, and for whatever reasons, these pre-production copies, there's a decent amount of them, and they may not have Journey Escape on it, so you have to test it. The other copy I had said Secret Agent on top of it, and I kind of freaked out. So anyways, yes, Bermuda Triangle, that has like a date on here. Look right here. Yep, the date. Please return to Data Age no later than January 5th, 1983. Very cool. It says that. It's kind of hard to see. But yeah. And so, yeah. And so testing this Journey Escape, it does not have Journey Escape on it. So I tested this one, and it actually has Frankenstein's Monster on it. And I'm like, man, that is so cool. And so you just have to test the carts if you get them, and make sure they have the game that they say they have on it. It could have something else. And so I don't want to think about how many games have been lost forever because of this. But yeah, very, very cool side story. But yeah, so there you have it. Got these in Canada. All right, there's some other things I need to discuss about Atari prototypes. The ones I showcase today are from third party. There's a lot of different variations out there, and it's important to know that there's a lot of fakes out there. You have to be very careful. Buy from someone reputable. And you just have to be careful. Prototypes is just one of those things, you know, they're fragile, and there's a ton out there that aren't being dumped. And you're probably wondering, what's dump? Dump is when the ROM has been saved on a computer, and there's just a lot of prototype collectors out there, because they don't want the value of their collection going down, are not saving these prototypes. And it just kills me, because there's games and they're going to be lost forever if we don't preserve. And so that's my thoughts. I believe in dumping prototypes. I know there's opposition to that, because, you know, some people might have spent lots of money on a prototype. Now, I'm not going to get into that discussion, but I'm just saying we need to preserve as much as we can, or it's lost forever. And so if you have a prototype, I do encourage you to back it up. And there's a lot of ways of doing that. You can go on Atari Age. There's people that are willing to help. And I encourage you to do that. Anyways, I want to thank people for tuning in to my humble channel as I march towards 60,000 subs. I had a lot of fun with this one today, talking about Atari prototypes. And, you know, I only have, you know, half a dozen in my collection of Atari prototypes. I have some other prototypes, and I might have to work a way of talking about those on future videos. Anyways, thank you so much. I'm still uploading 3 videos a week, one on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. And just want to thank you for all the support. I have some great stuff planned. I got some cool videos coming up, and just my hat's off. And folks are wonderful and beautiful. This is the Immortal John Hancock. You have a great day.